on self-awareness and self-esteem. I think most of us were able to learn a few things about ourselves and even maybe the people around and how we view ourselves and how we need to be taking good care of ourselves and thinking about ourselves. So at the moment, since it's a build-up session of session one, it was good that you now understand your space and your current environment and who you are. Good for us now to build onto another topic, which is depression. It's a major thing that is taking place and affecting most of us, even during this pandemic. And it's good that we are able to address that so that we can be able to handle other different issues differently, other than maybe how we are handling at the moment. So Brenda is here with us, and all the team from Windle and JRS as well are here, and we are pleased to start this session today. And before we do that, maybe I just need to take us back a little bit on what mental health is. And we say mental health is something that is emotional, helps us. It's also social, and again, it affects different parts of our well-being. For example, it affects how we think, how we feel, and how we act. And talking about depression today, we will be able to relate with those three things that I've just said, because depression affects how we feel, how we think, and even how we act. And how we act end up, of course, affecting our behavior. So just before I give Brenda the time to do the facilitation, maybe it's good to know what depression is. And psychologically, we will say depression is a mood disorder that causes persistence of different feelings of sadness and loss of interest in so many other things in our lives. Of course, it affects all those things that I've talked about already. There are different causes for that. And our session today is about coping with depression and how to cope with depression. But of course, Brenda will be able to take us through the session until when we also understand how to cope with it. So without taking a lot of time, I would like to welcome Brenda to take us through the session. Karibu, Brenda.
Asante sana. Hello, everyone. Good to see you again. So you can wave so that I know you can hear me. Oh, lovely. I can see Santino, Isabel, Christine. Okay. Thank you so much for having. Oh, yes, great. I can see more people now. Welcome to the session today. Yes, so today is about coping with depression, when the previous session was more about self-awareness. And we journeyed in a way through the story of our own lives and said that, with a narrative, understanding our own narratives, we are able to understand ourselves better. As you know, we are always starting with mindful practice so that we can bring ourselves present to this moment. So if it is comfortable for you, sit upright, your back elongated. If it is not, it's fine. Just be present with maybe a point. Being present with your breath, noticing it as it is. Is it slow? Is it fast? Noticing your thoughts, what's happening there, what's coming up for you. Just being present with it without judgment, just with loving acceptance. Noticing any sensations that arise within your body. Could be a breeze, could be warmth, pain, pleasure, whatever it is that comes up for you, noticing it and just being present with it. Taking a deep breath in, out, being present to the experience of this moment with the breath. Another deep breath in, out. One last deep breath in, out. Nice. You can open your eyes and welcome to the session of today. So, for those who are new to the session, my name is Brenda Jekorir. Um, we've heard from Christine a brief definition of what depression is, and I'll just go a little bit into the definitions before we can get into the coping so that we understand it better. So first, I just want to make you aware that if you have any question, comment, you can put it that comes up for you can send it on the inbox, and especially and if you want it privately, you can send it to Christine. That might help the process of responding in the process. So DSM-5 is the Bible of psychiatry. So DSM-5 is this book that has all these explanations of several mental illnesses and helps describe it. Because if you tell someone, no, depression is that disease or that condition that makes you sad, every one of us has had an experience of sadness at some point in time, isn't it? And we cannot all say that that is depression. So DSM-5 is this book in which, or this Bible, in which we are able to have certain specific things that we can use to define and say, that could be depression. So I'm going to give a few of this, but just to make you aware that, everyone is unique in their own way, and usually a diagnosis can best be done by a professional. So um, one of the things that usually happens is that with depression, they say you may have 5 or more of these symptoms and may have happened over the last 2 weeks. So first could be a depressed mood, like a low mood where someone is feeling numb or constantly sad, chronically tired, or just chronic fatigue, very low motivation. There could be diminished interest in things that you would enjoy usually, and then you may find significant weight loss. This could also come with issues of appetite, like increased appetite or very significantly reduced or lack of appetite. Then there's the fatigue, which we already talked about, and then diminished ability to think or concentrate, um, recurrent thoughts of death or suicidal ideations. And usually it's really important to seek help if, because these are risky, something we consider very risk. Um, and this has to be clinically significant. So someone will take you through and ask a few questions, and then get to understand. They could take you through a few questionnaires that could help define whether you have depression. However, most of us have had moments when we've had like significantly low motivation, chronic fatigue, sadness, even if it is not defined or diagnosed yet as depression. And so I'm going to speak to reach out to someone who has had a diagnosis for depression, or someone who may have experienced these symptoms and may want to find ways of coping and dealing with it. Yeah? Okay. So it said that 8 to 12% of the population will at some point in time experience actually clinical depression. It's also said that there's an increasing population of young people who suffer depression. Suicide is being seen as an increasing cause of death between the age of 15 and 29 young people. And we see that depression, most people who, suicide has been associated with depression as well. And so this is really something important to talk about with young people and to be conscious of as young people, because we are with people who may suffer, or we ourselves have had experiences that that could be like symptoms of depression. So, um, that is just from the diagnostic table tool. Now, from the physical space, looking at, and the way I told you I love stories. So we're going to look at the story of just our body and remembering from the last week, just being self-aware and recognizing our history. So this week again, we're going to be also self-aware. We're going to use the tools of self-awareness just to increase our understanding of what happens in the physical sense. Yes. So anyway, when we talk about the physiological response of the body, there is the fight, flight, freeze. Okay, there's the stress response and the rest and digest. So the body is always working hard to either protect you from danger, help you to like reach out for your needs, or help you build your metabolism and rest so that you can recover and maintain. And it has two systems that do this. There is one system that they call the parasympathetic system, and there is another one sympathetic system. I will not use complex terms. I'll just explain them in details. So one system is basically the social and safe system. It's this space where we are playful, we are learning, the body is just building up, we're resting. Then there's the fight, flight, freeze, or shut down response or faint. So in this space, in this other response, and it's where the body tries to protect itself. So think about this analogy. Imagine we are sitting like this and around the table having a conversation, and then somehow a lion comes in, or a snake. What happens? The immediate response is either run away for danger or find something to hit it to save you. That is what the flight fight response does. The body quickly shifts from that space where we are just having a comfortable conversation to a space where you either are running away for your life or you are attacking the source of danger. Now, in this point, the body does this by producing chemicals. So there will be the stress hormones, there will be cortisol, all these adrenaline, like all these like things that help the body respond, that will make the body now like move all the blood into the muscles to help you either run away or attack the source of danger. Sorry. Ah, okay. Okay, I'll request you to mute your microphone for ease. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, so talking about fight, flight, freeze, or shutdown response. So the flight fight response will be preparing you to either run away from danger or to attack it. So during the flight, we prepare the heart rate increases, blood pressure increases, all energy goes into our muscles just to prepare us to run away or attack. We have this hyper focus to be able to focus on what's the source of danger, all these physiological changes. And it is important for us. So, for instance, if you are preparing for an exam and the exam is about to occur, immediately the body prepares itself to motivate you, to get you into preparing for that exam and to pass. So, all this fight flight response is important. It's important for our survival. It allows us to do our everyday activities, it allows us to have this motivation. However, sometimes what happens is that we can move into the freeze response, freeze and or shutdown response. And today we'll focus on the shutdown response. Shutdown is where now, if the body is unable to either run away or to fight the source of danger, it plays dead. It prepares itself to die in a way. So what happens is that the heart rate goes down completely, slows down, the body becomes numb, we dissociate because the danger is overwhelming. So you dissociate from the source of danger, like there's no movement, immobilization, and sometimes people faint. Now, this is where the depression aspects, the physiology of the depression aspects comes in. And this is important to understand that sometimes, like for animals, for instance, in animals in a field that are playing, let's say zebras, and then all of a sudden a lion wants to attack them, they will run away, and or they'll run away, or if they are attacked, they could die. And animals usually are able to quickly move from that point of shutdown. And when they have an opportunity to run away, they will go back to the flight and freeze and then quickly to the sympathetic system, which is the rest and digest, or the safe, social and safe. However, sometimes for us humans, we have these moments where we get stuck. So we get stuck in this shutdown. Even when the danger is no longer there or present, it's still there in our perception, our mind, and we are stuck in that space of shutdown. And when we are stuck in this space of shutdown, what happened? They, there is an aspect of our brain mechanism that works. I am avoiding big words, but just there's the dorsal vagal parasympathetic system that takes over. This is where the shutdown now happens. And what happens during shutdown? There's this disconnect between the brain and the body, because now the brain is just moving, shutting down to the body. It's telling it, slow down completely, so the heart rate will be so slow. um there's very low motivation. There's just this dissociation of what's happening. That's why sometimes when someone is attacked, like I've seen even when working with clients who've experienced rape, what would happen is just they become completely unaware of what's happening. And this is just a way of coping. When we get stuck here, or when we are in this state, we may experience these symptoms that are completely similar to what we are calling depression. So, having understood this, and understanding how our physiology works for us, then the question would be, how do we cope with our body? How do we cope with ourselves? How do we cope with this that makes us not adaptive or maladaptive to our environment? How do we ensure that we are not stuck in a situation of shutdown, even when the source of danger is no longer present? Yeah. So, and that's the where we are focusing on today, about the coping mechanisms. The first step to coping is actually self-awareness, which is all the tools that we learned in the previous session. Because once you understand yourself, once you are aware of where you are, then it becomes easier to build on to, okay, what do I do next? What do I need? What do I need to change if it needs to be changed? What do I need to unlearn? What do I need to learn? Or what do I need to accept? Because some things cannot be changed. So some things call for a certain level just of acceptance. Now, there are some tools that I usually recommend when I work with clients with depression. And an example of this tool is a mood tracker, which is really great for self-awareness. And I would recommend for anyone. A mood tracker is just this tracker that helps you, it helps you to be aware of where you are. So for instance, it's usually divided into several columns. So the first one would be the mood in that moment. How do you feel? So let's say now I feel sad. So you recognize it. You can note it down. I feel sad. That's the mood. And then notice what's happening in my body. Then this moment of feeling sad, maybe I feel, my heart beats is fast or slow. Maybe I notice that my there's tension on my facial expressions, because you see our faces are always showing us where we are. Maybe I feel tension on my body or just feeling too tired. So you notice what's happening in the body. So you've noticed the mood, you've noticed the body, what's happening in the body. And then you notice what time is it. I like to notice the time because when you notice exactly what time is it, and you're able to keep track, you're able to know, I'm feeling sad, this is what's happening in the body, it's 11 thoughts. Maybe in this moment you're thinking, I'm not good. What happened? I lost so and so. I'm thinking about someone I lost. Whatever it is that is coming up for you in that moment of feeling sad, then you notice it. And then, sorry, kindly
Wah, boleh di kuala sih orang kau faida cukup sebab.
Makaba, kindly put your thank you. Noticing, once you notice your thought, now each time you can reflect on it. But then what happens is when you start observing, you remember when you talked about observer self in this process of self-awareness, when you start observing the patterns of your moods, you then start to understand what's happening, what are your triggers. Maybe you notice every time I'm washing my dishes, it's every time that I feel sad. And it's usually around this time. Every time I'm about to go to for a walk, it's the time that I start feeling or experiencing this. So by understanding this pattern, it helps you to be more self-aware. You remember, self-awareness is where the power lies. Then we start knowing what do we do with it. So that's where self-awareness lies, and that's the tool you could work with. Second is knowing that we can actually take charge of our nervous system. Our mental health challenges or problems or illness could be a result of histories. Maybe it could be a result of our trauma, it could be a result of our upbringing, it could be a result of what happened. Maybe our parenting, maybe our parents had experienced trauma and were unable to connect with us healthily when we were young, and we could be experiencing all these mental challenges in these moments. However, it's important to know that it still presents as physiological changes, and we have the ability to take charge of our body, of our nervous system. How do we do this? It's just to understand that, once the body has gone into fight, flight, freeze, or shutdown response, we are able to bring it back and help it complete the circle, because this circle always exists. We need the flight, fright response to help flight, fight, freeze, shutdown response, and we also need the rest and digest response. The rest and digest response is like a maintenance. It's like the maintenance of the body. If we use a car, for instance, like the maintenance, like checking the oil, checking. So, and this comes with things like resting, relaxation. It comes with things like sleeping. This is what eating, feeding well, healthily. These are the things that happen, the process of the rest and digest. And if the cycle is not complete and we are stuck somewhere, then if we are able to go to our nervous system and know, oh, we can take charge of it. And how do we take charge of it? Again, through the body awareness, through the mindful awareness of what's happening. So for instance, if you notice in this moment that I'm still stuck at a place of sadness and I have been here for a very long time, then just moving from the space of thoughts where you're thinking about sadness and all that, and moving to the space of what is happening in your body physiologically. What's happening in your body? So you start noticing what's happening in your body. Is there tension? Could you breathe to it and relax it? Is there, and when you start noticing, then you can start doing things. And when you know you're stuck at a flight fight response, I shouldn't be fighting in this moment. The fight is over. I should be running away right now. The danger is no longer there. I shouldn't be like shut down in this moment. Maybe I could get myself up again, and I'll give those skills in a moment of how to get back there. And then the other thing is social connection. So they say that we are social animals, and I know we mentioned this in the last week. And part of our adaptation as human beings is just this ability to connect. And when we have a good, healthy, playful, social connection, we are able to to feel like to be adaptive, to cope better. And if I'm able to share my story with you, with you. You can listen to me. You can smile with me, better. And there is even things in our brain, in our body. There is what we call the mirror neurons. Mirror neurons help us to reflect for each other. And so by having this social connection, social connectedness, and building onto our social environment such that it is healthy, it builds on us as individual, and we are able to connect healthily, most importantly healthily. Then we are able to cope better with these patterns that may manifest as depression. It's important to also shift perspective. Thing about depression, and if it's even difficult to describe with words, sometimes there's just this overwhelming sadness, inability to move. Somebody says, I just cannot wake up, and can just stay there for a very long time. Not that they are sleeping, but there's just this immense exhaustion. And then there's just this focus on everything being negative, and very low motivation, and maybe something bad may happen. It could be negative thought patterns. So one way of helping yourself is shifting. When you shift, you shift your focus, it may help in shifting your place of motivation. So this could happen by just finding a way of experiencing something different. You could, take a walk, you could do something neat, something that distracts you in that moment. And I found gratitude journaling as a very powerful tool. What is a gratitude journal? Gratitude journal is just this journal where you keep, and you just notice three things you're grateful for every day. I've used this often. Like I find every day look for something to be grateful for. In the beginning, and especially if you've had or you've been battling depression, this is so difficult to just find something to be grateful for. But the more you practice and just look, then you start shifting the focus of your mental focus, and then you start looking for things to be grateful for, and over time it becomes easier and easier, and it helps in that process of healing and actually coping. Going back to what I mentioned earlier, as a process of shifting from the space of shutdown and completing the circle. During shutdown, remember the body is numbing, it's just preparing for death. You see? So, how do we help it? How do we help it reconnect again? So, one is connecting with our senses, and we're going to do a small exercise. Sitting upright again, notice the smell around What do you smell? Maybe whatever it is, maybe it's just the freshness of air. Whatever it is, just notice the smell. What you see around you. You can look can look ahead of you. What colors do you see? What textures do you see? Is it rough, green, yellow? What do you notice? Just look. Then you could take your hand and touch a surface around you. It could even be your cloth. Is it smooth? Is it rough? Just notice how it feels. And you can notice how it feels on your skin of your hands. Is it rough? Is it smooth? Is it cold? Is there pressure? Is there heat? You can notice also your tongue. Or just maybe you're from eating a sweet and there are just some words. Yeah. You can now notice the sounds. And if it's comfortable, you can even close your eyes to notice sounds. In my place, I can hear roosters crowing. Just notice notice the sounds around you. Could be subtle, could be loud, whatever it is, notice the sounds. Okay, so this is a very powerful tool to use. Getting back to our senses. Sometimes when you're depressed or when you're overwhelmed by the mood or the emotion, we may get stuck on our mind. But then there is the part of what's happening physiologically. So when you come back to our senses and just remind our bodies to connect with our senses through smell, through sight, through hearing, through how we feel, this is very, very important. It's a very powerful tool that we can use. The other thing is body movement. I know during depression, it can be overwhelmingly heavy. And it's overwhelmingly like it feels heavy, tired, exhausting. Excuse me. And through body movement, as much as someone may feel like I cannot rise up, just doing something small, taking like 3 steps in front and back, or being able to run, being able to do something, an activity, some body movement, maybe stretching your hands, maybe moving your shoulders, maybe clapping, doing something to allow your body to move. By doing this, you start shifting the body. And when you start shifting the body, because it may not be easy to shift the state of mind, but it may be easier to shift from the body. And by making some small movements, it helps in the process of coping. And before you get there, it's good to keep exercise routines like taking a walk, dance. I know we talked about them in the last session, but these are really, really key because they help the body to shift from the parasympathetic to the sympathetic, or sympathetic to the parasympathetic nervous system. There are also other simple exercises such as meditation and mindfulness. And there is a book I would recommend. It's called Mindful Way to Through Depression. And I would like to just encourage mindfulness practices. What is a mindfulness practice? A mindfulness practice. I hear some people complaining about my network. Are you able to hear me? If you're able to hear me, let me see your hand. Ah,
Yes, we
lovely.
can hear you.
Thank you. Ah, okay. Glad. Yeah, so we were talking about
Hear
simple
you.
mindfulness practices. And this mindfulness practice yourself. And we've done this like what we did before we started the session, what we did in the last session. It's just being present with your breath. If you're washing dishes, can you mindfully be present there? If you're studying, can you be present in that moment? Because sometimes are you really, 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 really present? Sometimes we say we are present, but you're not there. We are thinking about something else. I'm thinking about my girlfriend who left me. I'm thinking about, how haven't I finished school? We are thinking about all these things that could be happening in our thoughts. Through a mindfulness practice, we become more present with the activities that we do. And while our thoughts will always veer off into different directions, just being able to be gentle with ourselves, with loving kindness and compassion, bringing it back to the present moment. And we can use breath as a tool. And I know we talked about breath in the last session. The other thing is medication. So for some people, they may need medication to be able to help them with especially clinical like depression. And this can be given, by a professional. It would be important to be diagnosed, and then it can be given by like a psychologist. The other thing is to work with a counselor or a therapist. And maybe if I'm speaking about these things, they sound so familiar to you. You realize, wait, I am always crying every day. I'm always having all this overwhelming sadness. I experience suicidal ideation and think about death every time. I'm always very not motivated to do anything. I have this chronic fatigue and it's so familiar to you. I would recommend that you reach out to someone. And present here we have Christine, who is a counselor and counseling psychologist. Also, we have Lynn, who's a counseling psychologist. And I know there are several other professionals within, the refugee setup who provide these services. And I hope they can share their contacts here so that if you feel that this is very familiar to me and I would like support, therapy can be helpful. Therapy helps us to, you remember when we were talking about like our narratives, this helps us to build a narrative and make sense of our situations and know what are the coping strategies that work best for me, what are the like strategies that I could utilize, where am I as at now, could I need medication, or do I need to use which tools to help me. So this is why working with someone is really important. um I think, having said that, I'll finish with self care, something that we talked about also in the previous session. And self care, as we categorized it into four. So there's the physical, intellectual, emotional, social, or spiritual. So these are tools to always go back to and every day. And maybe this is the question I'm posing to you today. What have you done in the last week since we last talked for yourself physically? How have you built on yourself physically? I know you have an answer. Have you taken a walk? Have you danced maybe? Have you run? Have you played a game? Whatever it is, something to build on yourself physically. Have you been eating well? Intellectually, what have you done for yourself, your mental well-being? Have you read a book? Have you listened to like an informative podcast or video? What have you done? Have you shared and learned from a friend? Um, then, what have you done for yourself emotionally? Have you been connecting with others? Have you made a call to someone you love? Have you gifted yourself? Have you gifted someone? Have you connected with others? Have you made time? Then, what have you done spiritually? If you're a religious person, have you prayed? Did you keep an affirmation? Did you say to yourself how beautiful, handsome, intelligent you are? Did you remind yourself that? Have you prayed? Did you sing? So these are tools to remember. And it doesn't matter whether you have depression or not. As a human being, and in this kind of stressful environment we are in, and in these circumstances, especially with COVID, then it's important to keep reminding ourselves that these are things we have to nurture for us to keep our well-being and to allow our bodies to work for us. So I'll invite questions and end it at that, unless there's something, Christine.
Thank you so much, Brenda, for taking us through the session. That was really good. And it was good to remind people about self-care that you had talked about even last week. Those are very important tools to also deal with depression. I mean, I can't leave out the things that you have said that are going to help us cope with depression. For example, gratitude journal. You can also do a gratitude jar where you can put those three things that you're grateful for every other day. It's a good thing, like Brenda has said, it helps us focus on the positives and not the negatives. And Brenda has clearly said, over time, you're able to look back and then notice that you have been having so many other positive things in your life than even the negative things. Shifting the focus from the fright, the flight and fright is a good thing as well. And using the journaling, and the self-awareness, knowing what the environment is all contained in is a good thing. So at the moment, you're going to give uh, Kasaya a moment to play Santino's short clip, and then we'll welcome Santino to say something. before we do the questions and answers. So Kasaya, karibu.
Thanks, Christine. I think I missed that. A clip, did you say?
Oh yeah, or even Steve can go ahead and play the clip.
Yes, Steve, go ahead, please.
Thank you. I think we have a student from JRS SNHU program who has prepared a clip for us. It's called Sankino Sebit Riak. So Sebit, are you able to maybe play the clip and then share with us a bit your journey?
Yes, I'm in a position to share the clip.
Sure, thank you. So what do you need? Do we need to enable, are you able to share your screen? Is that what will enable you to share the clip?
Maybe the host to enable me to share the screen.
Okay, so I can, let's just make you a co-host. Sebit. The host, can you maybe make Sebit to be a co-host? It's like I don't have the rights at the moment. Santino Sebit.
Kasaya, go ahead and make him a co-host.
So that he can share his screen.
I think as that goes on, anybody with a question, please start putting in your chat box so that Christine and Brenda can be looking at them. Thank you.
And please, at the moment, just bring in your question.
Nipatie 4 minutes.
Kama hiyo ndio tunawa 10 people okay.
Christine or Brenda, there's a question as we wait for that. Can you see that question in the chat box, Christine? And yeah. If you are depressed and you can't share with us, yeah, or anyone, how can you cope with it by yourself? That is from Ijabo.
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Yes,
okay.
Please.
So there are a few more questions that have been sent also privately. So I'll start with, if you are depressed and you can't share, how can you deal with it? So first, noticing is one powerful space. That's a starting point. Noticing what's happening to you. Like you've noticed that you are depressed. What is making you think that you are depressed? There are things that you're noticing, isn't it? So noticing that and how it's happening is important. So if it is appetite that is being interfered with, if it is suicidality that you're experiencing, if it is low mood that is constantly happening, exhaustion, then noticing these things. You want to cope it on your own, I hear. That instead of reaching out to someone to cope with, then you start looking at all these factors. So we talked about the nervous system. We talked about the nervous system, and what we mean by the nervous system is just how do we move from this space of shutdown where the body is numb, where the body is no longer is dissociating, where the body is experiencing all this low motivation. Then we start looking for activities. We talked about the using the senses, the body senses. So utilizing all the 5 common sense that we know from primary school. How do I, what are those things that, how do I become aware? I don't know. There's a poll ongoing. How do I become aware of those senses in that present moment. By being aware of them like this, you start awakening the brain to observe, and by observing you start initiating ways in which the body could start finding its own coping. Secondly is movement, like exercises we talked about. If you can do yoga, it's really a good exercise because it's both mind and also body. Any kind of exercise that will help the body to start moving. In the moment when you're depressed, this could be overwhelmingly difficult, but the more you start moving, then it allows. Then there's creative expression. Creative expression is just a way of letting out these emotions that could all be present within. How do I let it out creatively? So a form of a creative expression could be journaling. So you could write down all these stories because it's difficult to connect with someone and share. And then you could write them down yourself and just share it. You don't have to reread it later. Just having this ability to do what? To be able to express it. If in the process it feels like crying, it feels like, just allow yourself to be breathing and being present with that moment. And then another form of creative expression is painting. You don't have to be a professional painter or color like artist to know these things. Just by taking colors, things that you could just use to paint, play with color, those could help a lot. Also, some people use arty things like molding, plasticine, clay, soil, whatever it is, a resource that is within your reach that you can use to play around, knitting. Then this allows you to shift and allows your body to find a place of creative expression. And then lastly is what we talked about for self-care. All these tools for self-care help you with the coping process. But what I would really recommend is working with someone. If you are already experiencing, especially suicidality, it is important to talk to someone because during this moment of shutdown, there could be dissociation. Dissociation is whereby, like, usually we make sense of our world by making associations, what we are calling the narrative. Dissociations happens when we shift off and cannot make sense of what is happening, you see. And as a result, sometimes we need somebody else to help us make sense of this narrative. And so this I would really recommend. And this response also to someone who talked about suicidality and death. And yes, when there is constant thinking about death and are suicidal, that's a risk factor. And I would really recommend to work with someone because when you're thinking like this, it's just the body that is trying to shut down, trying to find its way of surviving. And this is it's found that flight and fright is not working, so it's shutting down, it's preparing for death. But if indeed the situation is that you are not being attacked by a lion, the threat is not imminent, it's more perceived, then we want to shift that perception so that we are able to cope with the situation. Like we are able to find a way of shifting from a shutdown to awakening the flight response, and then the rest and digest, where we feel social and safe and are able to connect with one another. I hope I responded to that. Mm.
Thank you. Kasai, are you now able to play the video? Or able to make Sebit the host, a co-host?
Dominic is working on that. So what we do, we'll
because as a co-host, you can also share your screen. The video is already you have the link. Or Brenda can continue with the next question as Dominic works on that.
Yeah, thank you.
The other question is, when my emotion, how can I handle my emotion when it's really overwhelming for me? So we all experience emotions. Apparently, an emotion can stay for 90 seconds. I don't know. But they say yes, an emotion lasts for 90 seconds. And if we can categorize them quickly, we have sadness, we have joy, we have fear. The other one. sexual feelings, and anger, if I can categorize them into 5 major ones. Others can fall onto some of these, like anxiety can fall under fear. So when these emotions are overwhelming for me, what do I do? So usually when emotions are overwhelming, the body starts responding on itself. And I remember last week there's someone who asked a question around ego. Yes. So the brain starts to find ways of coping and dealing with an emotion. It could deal with it by being in denial that it's happening, it's shutting down, what we are calling the shutdown, repressing the emotion, pushing it away. And when you repress it and push it away, it can find a way of coming back again. So like something makes you angry, but you push it away. Then another time you find yourself just punching people, or just somebody asks inside a kalam or give me a pen, and immediately you shout at them, and like the correlation is not there, but it's because of the repressed emotions that could be there. Um, Intellectualization or rationalization, avoidance. So all these are ways in which people could cope, but however, it's adapt. The brain tries to adapt, or the mind tries to adapt. But when the emotion is overwhelming, what is the best way in which you can actually deal with it or cope with it? The interesting thing is it's feeling it, allowing it to be. And can I go ahead? Yes. So when you allow the emotion, sorry.
Sorry, Sabit, wait for Brenda to finish and then you can start sharing, please.
Or I could continue, just pause it first.
Yeah, let Brenda finalize and then you can continue.
So to deal with an overwhelming emotion, it's important to just feel it. And this is why mindfulness practices are important, because you start to make friends with your feelings. When that sadness is there, it is there. No matter how much we try to, say it's not there, it's still a part of us. And the more we make friendship with it and we notice it, then the more we are able to cope with it and find resources within ourselves. So I would say feeling it, allowing yourself to be present with that feeling, and using the breath. How do we use the breath? By taking a deep breath in. We allow all this oxygen, all this, we allow all these muscles and a sort of reception. But when we breathe out, what's happening is there's a sort of, shift into the parasympathetic nervous system. You notice if you breathe out, the shoulders fall back, there's a way in which you relax, and somehow, you shift the emotion. That's why the breath work is very powerful. So I would say feeling it, being friendly with that emotion, and using the breath to manage the overwhelming emotion. And we'll do a breathing exercise later. So yeah, you can go ahead and share.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe Sabit, as you are sharing, you can tell the viewers briefly like what this is all about.
Oh, all right. So this a short film about depression, how depression can lead you into doing some things you've never done before, and also it will tell us like that whenever you're experiencing depression, you are not always alone. There's some people who see about you, who will call you to check on you. There are those people who are close to you that even when your thoughts are on suicidal, you can still overcome them because there are some people who really care about you.
Sure, thank you. Go ahead. Does it have sound, Sebit? We are not getting any sound.
Yeah, I think there's about background sound playing.
But we can't get any sound.
Can you hear the background music, like the sound?
No.
From the video?
No, we can't.
Let me see what. Is it playing now?
Not really.
Okay. The video has its sound. I don't know why it's not playing, but I can hear from my earphones that it's playing.
Can you guys hear it?
No, I can't hear it myself.
He needs to remove the earphones, I think.
Probably that can work.
Yeah.
Okay, let me remove the earphones.
Yeah, I think that should work, actually. Remove the earphones.
Can you hear any sound now?
Yes.
Yes.
Just increase the sound to maximum from your side.
It's slow though.
Yeah.
Can you increase the volume?
It's over.
Thank you very much, Sebit, for having the courage to actually share your story. Do you want to say something about that clip and how you have come to this fun now?
Oh, yes. You know, during the COVID time, a lot of things happened. Because personally, I'm more of a filmmaker and yes, and a voiceover documentarist. So, so during that time, our industry was much affected, and myself included, and other creatives in the industry who could not have the who could no longer get the jobs that were keeping them a contact, or couldn't do any shoots or do anything creative like could generate them income. So most of us were very affected, and some of my friends actually, uh, the situation was very bad. And apparently I had a friend of mine, even who's very close to me, because we were partners. He succumbed to depression, although I was also part of it. I was also in depression, but it took another path, and unfortunately, we lost him. It was sad, it was painful. So the things like what you could see in the video. So uh, things with time become, when you are depressed, things become like not meaningful to somebody anymore, and what is in your mind now is it's suicidal. Like you can see from the video, when I was on the edge of the flat, so it was more of a suicidal thought of thinking to jump over. And the other part was like, you engage now into drugs, you want to overdose yourself, uh, and mostly that is how like uh, the creatives will overdose themselves and say, okay, it's a wrap, it's an end. Let's put this to pass. Let's say the life has been a good journey, and let us end it here. So that is how one of my friends actually uh, ended his life, by overdosing himself with drugs. So it's more of a dedication I did to him, and also can tell people like the way like mom was calling on the phone, it shows that your life no longer it's not all about you. There are some people who care about you. There are some people uh, whom, by you ending your life, you'll really hurt them, uh, and it's not all about you. At the end of the day, that some people will really need you to be alive to pull yourself together and overcome things.
Thank you so much for having the courage to share this. I'm sure so many of the people right now on this platform can relate to the clip and everything that happened there. And this just ends up to show us how serious depression is and how it might actually end up in a very bad place. I want to say I'm so sorry for the loss of your friend. And I hope even at the moment you're working on yourself. And thank you so much for sharing. To everybody here, I think there was different symptoms and things that were happening in the clip that we could pick from here and there. about someone with depression. You could see him restless, could not eat. Those are some of the symptoms when you start experiencing you might want to get help. When you're not able to rest well, and when you're unable to eat, you are unable even to pick up calls from important people. But as Sebit says, then a lot of things make up sense to you, that there are actually other people that really care about you, and that you are not just alone in this. Like how the mother was calling and he kept on missing calls. We need to also identify that we need a support system even as we go through the difficult times. Like, who are your support system? Is it your parents, your friends, your caregivers? Who is close to you that you can always share this to? As someone had asked, Ijabo had said, when you are depressed and you cannot share it with anybody. Can you deal it with yourself? It's good to know that you can speak out and say that you're not okay. Just like when we began the first session, that's what we said. Once you need to speak to someone, open up and speak to someone. Do not keep it to yourself. The more you share, the better it becomes. And you will find someone to walk the journey with you before it gets into the deep, dark end. So with this, I think I'll still give Brenda to answer a few questions before we end our session. Brenda, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that sharing, and just for bringing to light what really happens during depression. And it could be, it starts with small things. Like, I remember someone could, when I was in Kakuma and was working with someone who had depression, would say, I could not even go and pick my food rations. I could not, things that would be very important, but they don't have the motivation to. I am not charging my phone because I don't want anybody to talk to me, and I don't want to talk to anybody. Someone has been in their house for several days and have not moved. But when you ask them, are you sleeping? No, they're just lying in bed because there is no sleep. And these are things to look out for. These are things to look out to. If you are now starting to feel, yeah, something is happening that is not usually normal, my motivation is really so low, then it's important to start seeking help. But then sometimes we are in this space where we are too overwhelmed to even notice that we need help. And that's what Christine is talking about, the support system. As students working together, studying together, and in an environment together, I would really advise that it's important to work together, like to know or find each other's support system. Who is this person that's closer to me? Peter has not talked to anybody, and I haven't seen him in like a whole week. Where has he been? The last time Peter was talking, he was looking like he's not very present. Or you may find even like using excessive behaviors. It could be like drinking, you know, uh, and these are like self-destructive behaviors. So you're like, oh, nowadays, maybe Mahir is drinking a lot more. What's happening? And he used not to drink. Well, like, this person is sleeping too much. He's been sleeping since morning until this afternoon. What's happening? And that way we become each other's keeper, and it's good to just refer them for help. There was another question around stress response, the fight flight response. I'm told that next week we'll be talking about anxiety, which captures a lot of that fight flight response. And just to be clear, fight flight freeze response, it's always constantly happening. This is just the parasympathetic sympathetic nervous system. It's always this cyclic system that is always working to maintain us. When it is a problem is when we are stuck in that sort of response, which we are responding to right now. When you are stuck in that moment, what do you do? And I hear someone talking about the flight fight response. This could be manifested through, anger bursts, aggression, or anxiety. Then this is something that we'll tackle more in the next, I think, Christine, in the next week when we'll be tackling we'll be tackling anxiety. But meanwhile, I would say breath work is really a powerful tool to use to cope.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brenda. You want to say something?
I was mentioning that in the next week we'll be dealing with anxiety based on a question that we had. Is that true?
Yes.
Great. Something else that came up is about trauma. If you've had like traumatic events that still affect you today, how do we cope? So it's almost the same patterns of just noticing what are these patterns that constantly keep recurring. And then from there, and using the coping mechanisms that we have discussed, I would recommend highly talking with someone to help you process and make sense. You remember the narrative that we talked about in the last week? This would be a very powerful tool to utilize to make sense of our traumatic events. And in the next session, I will prepare something small also if I'm, to capture that a bit on trauma while we'll be talking about anxiety, just so that I can respond to that best. You mentioned there was another question around also supporting others. For instance, in this moment, you're a health worker, you're working with people who are suspected to have COVID, and this comes with a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. What will happen to me? What if I get the disease, which is okay and it is normal. And as a caregiver, sometimes we are also giving so much of ourselves, and self-care is very important as a self-care. Because even when you go to a first aid class, the first thing they ask you is, are you first safe? You cannot offer service to others if you are not safe yourself. And this is what I would recommend, that first, how do you work on your own safety? How do you work on building your own self first so that you are able to help others? So for instance, now working with the self-care tools, how do you build on yourself even if you're in a tough working condition? Can you do a walk every day? Can you find a way of doing meditation, mindfulness practices, so that you invest in yourself even as you invest in others? So that's something I would respond in regard to caring for others and moments of fear and anxiety. And I would say, if it is overwhelming, kindly reach out to someone. Christine is available, Lynn is available, and I'm sure there are so many support system around like the refugee setup. Please reach out. I don't know if there's any other question that warrants my response. So you may find, you mentioned, someone asks privately that if you have a friend who you notice that you have a problem with them, but then you later learn that they might have gone through depression, how do you deal with that? Yeah. So what I would say is, how can you be supportive to one another? You remember we talked about mirror neurons. We are the ones who respond. So by being present for that friend, just listening and allowing them to express, offering a listening ear, taking a walk with them, reminding them of the coping mechanisms, leading them to somewhere where they can get help. This is the best way you can help your friend. Just telling them, oh, it's okay, validating their emotions and letting them that it's okay to feel the way you feel. This is the best way you could work around it. Allow yourself to be and being present with them. But to be present with a friend, you have to be present with yourself. So the more you work on yourself, it becomes easier to be supportive to a friend. I think, yeah, unless there's a specific question you feel I should. Thank you so much. I think I'll leave it at that. But I want to make a difference between feeling the emotion and ruminating. So sometimes I know someone had asked, if I have an overwhelming emotion, how do I deal with it? And I say, feel it. So there's a difference between feeling it and ruminating. Feeling it is allowing yourself to experience how it is in your body. What are the sensations that are rising? How does my heart, what's the heartbeat? What's my tummy feeling like? What's my head? What's my eyes? How does it feel on your body? But ruminating is starting to think about it. What did I do? You see me, and you see, if I had not done this, it's going into the thought process. So there's a very big difference. So you may start ruminating and saying, you see, I'm sad because of this and this. However, rumination leads to depression or worsens a depressive episode. So I would discourage rumination, but instead you feel it. You feel, be present with the body. You move from the place of the rational or the brain, just thinking, to the place of the body. How does it really feel? And breathing to it and allowing yourself to be. So I'll finish at the end with a mindfulness breathing exercise, but I'll allow Christine to take over for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda, for answering those questions so well. I mean, I think with everything that we've been able to talk about from the first session to now, I think people have come to a realization of maybe where they are and what they need to do about what they are going through. But the good thing about this whole thing is that you have help. All of you can reach out to someone. We are here because we are here to help, and we are here to walk different journeys with different of you. So for me, I would really say speak it out. Don't keep quiet. Even after this session, we might not be able to answer all the questions, but then we are here to do the follow-up even after, to know who is doing what and how are they feeling about the moment and even the situation that has been since COVID started and even way before COVID happened. So we are here to do a follow-up even after, if we are not able to answer all the questions. But for now, I'll allow Kasaya to give us the response on the poll before we move on. So Karibu Kasaya.
Thank you, Kristen. Actually, what we want to do is just to go to polls quickly, and I hope all of us can be ready to respond to this. So get your device ready so that we just look at this. So thanks, Dominic. We're posting this right away. Okay. So this is what we got from, are you able to see? I hope, let me see if either give me your electronic clap or raise your hand physically in the video if you are seeing what we are presenting as a response. Okay, great. Are you able to see what is on the screen?
Are you sharing your screen, Kasaya?
Oh.
You haven't shared anything.
You've not shared your screen.
Okay, I'm sharing the results.
Oh, okay.
Are you seeing the
I
results?
can see now.
Thank you very much. So from the responses, thank you, Dominic, for helping us just get this. The major cause of depression among college university students in Kenya, the top one was at 70%, lack of funds to pay rent and fees, followed by fear of failing a course unit at 54%, and then closely followed by missing marks and being dumped by a lover. I think the list was other, and we don't know what this other was, but that makes a lot of sense. That I want to imagine that these are issues that we all struggle with in our institutions. So when somebody says that lack of funds to pay rent or fees is a top cause of depression, we identify with it. So that, yeah, that is it. So thank you very much for all of you for your participation in this poll. And thank you. And back to Christine.
Okay, thank you, Kasaya. Interesting. Now we know the things that really cause depression among the university and college students in different levels. And we can actually relate to so many of those things that are actually causing depression among the students. For now, I will give Steve the chance to give us the closing remarks, and then Brenda will take us through the last mindfulness exercise before we end. So karibu Steve, and thank you so much Kasaya.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I'm trying to set my video, but it's like some tech issues, so we'll do with that. We'll do with my voice. I want to thank Brenda and for her presentation, and all of us for making time to be here. Depression is a serious challenge, and just from the poll we see like most of our students are depressed due to lack of school fees and rent, and these are things as
did we lose each other, Christian?
Hello, Kasaya?
Yes?
Were you saying something, Kasaya?
I think he was.
Or I can
unmute, please. Oh.
You are muting. Okay, we understand that this is a challenge that students are going through.
Okay, Dominic or technical team?
What's happening, Kasaya? You are on mute, or can you try to mute then?
Christine.
Yes, Dominic?
I can hear you. I don't know. Kasaya, you okay?
He's okay. I don't know whether he's okay, but we are all doing well. The session is moving on okay.
Yeah, I can't hear Kasaya.
Go on, Steve.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So generally, we understand depression is a challenge, and we have the fears as university students. And these are like, these fears are things which will be with us even as we move on to our careers and our families and all that. So we just need to use the tools that Brenda has shared with us in order to take care of ourselves. But please, please, please know that we have our families, we have people who care for us, and situations are difficult. They are very, very, very difficult. However, please don't give up now. We can get through it. And the challenges that we have, even being heartbroken, the lady you loved so much has now moved on. You feel like you'll not fall in love again. Life is not worth living. This beautiful lady has gone to some old man. Or even your best friend is the one who has snatched this beautiful lady from you. My friends, don't give up. You will feel the pain the way Brenda told us, not ruminating, feel the pain, be in the moment. And just ask yourself, 1 year from this, how will it be? Most of the time you realize that the things that stressed us 1 or 2 years ago, we laugh them off nowadays. You're like, I almost lost my life because of that girl. Look at her. I almost left my life because of that boy. Look at him. Like, sometimes we feel we are on a mountain, but once we allow ourselves to go through 1 year, 2 years, we realize that what we saw as a mountain was actually a hill. So thank you so much, our students, and we are excited for your participation here today. We look forward to the final session for next week, which we want to be also as engaging. It will be our final, as we'll be wrapping this series of workshops, and we are excited for it. Otherwise, thank you so much. Over to you, Christine.
Thank you, Steve. very much for the closing remarks. I want to say thank you for everyone that attended the forum. It was really informative. We are looking forward for our last session, which will be next week, and we'll be talking about coping with anxiety. Let's take this time to learn and to actually put these things in perspective of what we are going through at the moment. Let's reach out, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you next Friday. Thank you all for attending. And before we end, I'm giving it to Brenda to do the closing mindfulness exercise as we end. So after Brenda, we can leave. Thank you very much, all of you. Karibu, Brenda.
So bringing yourself back to this present moment, you've been listening, the things that you've had connected with made sense to you. Just notice where you are. If it is comfortable for you, you can close your eyes. You can sit upright, be comfortable. Then notice your breath as it is now. Notice what's happening. Notice your thoughts. Maybe it's from what we've heard, seen, discussed. Just notice them without following them. And when you notice them, come back to your breath. Now scanning your head and noticing your skull, noticing your face. Is it wrinkled? Is it smiling? What's happening to the subtle muscles on your face? Coming down to your neck, your shoulders. Are you tensed and holding up? You can rest it a bit and let it relax. Noticing your hands, noticing your back, the whole of it, and remembering to breathe to it. Noticing your front part, your throat. Notice if there is any tension, breathe to it. Noticing your chest, maybe subtle sounds of your heartbeats. Whatever it is that you notice, be present with it with your breath. Down to your tummy. If there's any anxiety, any discomfort, take a deep breath into it and relax with the outward breath. Noticing your pelvic region, also breathing to it and letting off the tension if there is any. Noticing your thighs. If there is any tension, let it relax. Noticing your feet, your legs, and then your feet on the ground. Feeling supported by the ground under you that you're sitting or the chair that's holding you. Take a deep breath in, out. Being kind and loving to yourself and remembering to find those coping strategies and knowing that what you are seeking is within you. One last deep breath in.
Umezoea, pandisha mwili.
Thank you.
Pandisha mwili.
Now coming back to this present moment, you can open your eyes. You can be present to this present moment. Yeah, move your fingers a bit, your toes. Nice. Thank you so much for being here and for listening. I look forward to seeing you in the next week. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda, and thank you for everyone who has attended this forum. Now we come to a close, and enjoy your weekend. See you next week on Friday, same time. Thank you.
Christine?
Yes?
I'm seeing Paula has joined us, so maybe if she's able to do.
Okay.
Yeah, Paula, take over for our photo session.
Hey, hello team. Thank you very much, Brenda, Steve, Christine, and everybody for such an interesting encounter. As the last time, whoever wants to join, if you want, we can take a picture to share in our social media. So whoever wants to be part of the photo, just put on your camera and we will take a fast shot. We will wait 20, 30 seconds to see if, to give the time to everybody who wants to join. Fantastic. So good to see your faces.
We are smiling.
Always smiling. It's one of the best ways to cope with depression, Cynthia. Fantastic. Okay. Let's wait a little bit more. Since there are different slides, we will need to take one per page. So?
Steve has to give us his face.
Paula, do you tell us 1, 2, 3, go? Or
I will tell you. Let's go for the first one.
We are still setting. Okay.
I didn't know your face is this dark, Steve.
Okay, let's go for the first photo. Sawa? 3, 2, 1, smile. Fantastic. Let's go for the second one. Okay, we have somewhere, we have more people here. Fantastic. Let's give 10 more seconds for the rest of the people if anyone wants to join else. Okay. Fantastic. Duende. Again, 3, 2, 1, smile. Fantastic. Asante ni sana. All of you, thanks a lot and wish you a wonderful week. See you next week.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. See you next week.
Bye.
Thank you.
Hiyo sisi hatuendi. Ama kufunza sasa. Sawa. Twende.
House of the Lord. Yes, I found them dancing in the house of the Lord. You boys. Yes, I found them dancing in the house of the Lord. Yeah, yeah, lega. Yeah, we follow. Yeah, yeah, mara. Yeah, jump. Yeah, dancing, dancing in the house of the Lord. Always dancing, dancing in the house of the Lord. We follow, but the band. You find them singing in the house of the Lord. Yes, I found them singing in the house of the Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put that hands together like this. Come on. Singing hallelujah in the house of the Lord. Hallelujah in the house of the Lord. Hallelujah in the name of the Lord. Hallelujah yes in the house of the Lord. You find them praising in the house of the Lord. Yes, I found them praising